Thank you. Okay, so hi again, my name is Rachel Wynn. I'm also joined by my good friend Reagan Rosenberger, and we are part of the Pre-Health Virtual Shadowing Program. Essentially, we started this program, 7 pre-medical students, 1 medical student, and 2 providers, Dr. Fowler and Dr. Morchetti. We came together because we saw that there was such a difficulty in at least undergrad to get shadowing. And we were planning on making a program before COVID hit. Once COVID hit, we decided to make it virtual. So that's the little spiel that I went over before. If you have any questions, there'll actually be 2 little Q&A sessions, and we will actually have, you can contact us at our Instagram and email us at virtualshadowing@gmail.com. So let's skip around. Okay, so our program is about connecting pre-health students with opportunities to learn about what field they're interested in. We promote networking, resource sharing, and peer support within our program. Each week, we have sessions that cover medical school admissions process, why you should seek a career in medicine, and also why you shouldn't. Current events such as COVID and diversity in medicine, various medical specialties such as we had tactical medicine come in, we've had OB-GYN come in, family medicine. So we definitely try to reach whatever you're interested in. And during those sessions, we like to cover real life case studies. One of our more recent sessions with Dr. Christo Phillip actually showed us videos from his practice when he was practicing in India. And a lot of those cases were like things that we have vaccines for to prevent, like tetanus. He showed a couple cases of rabies. So really interesting stuff. So you can get kind of as close of a real life experience as you can in this virtual setting. And we also have patient examination techniques. We show you what is the mindset of our providers going through these case studies, how they approach it, and tips on differential diagnoses. So what we've covered so far, and you can absolutely watch these on our YouTube channel, Pre-Health Virtual Shadowing, it should be the first one that pops up. We've had SWOT and tactical medicine with Dr. Morchetti, and he actually showed us, a drug bust, and he actually, described what it was like with the Dallas shooting and how he was a provider during that time and how it was kind of scary. We've talked about pediatrics and emergency medicine pediatrics. If you're interested in becoming a physician assistant, we've had 2 physician assistants come on talking about family medicine and OB-GYN. Medicine, we've had ultrasound in medicine, we've had COVID-19 and how it affects medicine. And during that session, we actually went through some of the details and numbers. So if you ever want to watch that, it's on our channel. How to get into medicine from an application standpoint, and also as like an undergrad standpoint, like what you have to do or what you should do in your undergrad, and also diversity in medicine. And so those are the sessions that we've had so far. We've had about 20 sessions, so we've had plenty of material if you want to watch it. Our upcoming sessions, so next Tuesday, we have a specialty spotlight in anesthesiology with Dr. Charles Dale. And after that, we have a specialty spotlight in psychiatry with Dr. Gutierrez. And then after that, we have a specialty spotlight in neurology and radiology with Dr. Novakovic. And so each of these sessions are going to be at Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So let's talk more about how our program works. Every Tuesday, we have a live session you can join at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and you can join via Zoom or YouTube Live. Our Zoom can only hold up to 1,000 participants, so if you can't make our Zoom, you can absolutely join our YouTube Live. There's no max capacity for that, but YouTube Live does have like a 20-second delay. Links to the live sessions will be sent out twice a week, every Wednesday and Sunday. And during that, we will have 2 Q&A sessions or sections. The presenter will be asked questions from y'all. Y'all will have the opportunity to ask questions in the chat, and we'll ask them for you. And also in the Zoom chat, Dr. Fowler and Dr. Morchetti are actively participating, so you can always ask them questions. And sometimes we even have another provider, Dr. Salazar. So if you ever want to interact with them, you can absolutely join our Zoom chat. If you miss a live session, that is totally okay. We know that y'all are busy undergrad students. You have to keep up your good grades. You have to maybe study for your graduate program test. So if you miss a live session, that's okay. We post our recorded sessions on our YouTube channel right after, so you can watch it in your own time. After the session, you have an opportunity to do a short assessment. It's not hard. It's 10 multiple choice questions, maybe a true or false thrown in there, but it's really to ensure that you're actively listening to our providers. Again, it's not supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to trick you, just to make sure that you're listening. And you have 2 attempts to do these assessments to get a score of 70 or above to pass and earn the certificate. Each certificate is worth 2 hours of shadowing credit, and they will be due by the following Tuesday at 6:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. So it's basically due you have about a week, and it's due right before the next session starts. These are not for you to turn into graduate programs. The certificates are for you to keep track of your hours in our program. Graduate programs will typically ask your total hours in an activity, and I can speak from personal experience, and so can Reagan, about how during the application cycle and process, one of the harder things to do is to remember, okay, what did I do in my 3 or 4 years of undergrad? Like, when did I start certain activities? How many hours per week? What are the total hours per week? What did I learn? Why was that important? So certificates are there for you to help you remember, okay, I did shadowing from this time to this time, and this is what I learned every week, and this is the total amount of time, so I can accurately put it on my application. And should you put us on your application, and schools reach out to verify your activity in our program, we ask that you send us a copy of your certificates, and we'll verify it with our own records, and we'll completely sign off on, like, hey, you were in our program. So yeah, you have 2 attempts to get a certificate each week. And the certificates are through QuestBase. You do not need a QuestBase account. So how to join the program. Oh, also, if I didn't mention, this program is absolutely free. You can go to our website, www.virtualshadowing.com, click the Contact Us tab, and fill out our Google form. It's really quick, it's really simple. Be sure to enter in the correct email. We can't email you if you give us the wrong email. We will email you within 48 hours of you signing up. Please be on the lookout for Welcome to Virtual Shadowing in your inbox or spam/promotions folder. Sometimes email servers will hide our emails unless you directly search for virtual shadowing or welcome to. So please keep that in mind when you're watching out for an email from us. How else to get involved? You can join our Slack group. We have almost 1,000 members in our Slack group, and students all around the world get to share their resources, activities, advice. We have a little study buddies chat. We have a chat for how to resources y'all can share about the MCAT or the GRE. It's really cool because we have students from all around the world. So, like, we've had students from Singapore, the Philippines, Egypt, let's see, what else? England, we've had from Canada, Puerto Rico. So you get to meet so many cool people. And if actually you want to help us and you know any providers that would be great speakers, please ask them to email us at virtualshadowing@gmail.com, and we will try to work with them to see if they can get involved too. All right, so this is halfway through my presentation. Does anyone have any questions so far? Y'all can unmute if you have any questions.
Or if you guys would prefer, you can easily just use a chat. And if you're more comfortable, you can just private message me and then I can ask them for Rachel. Rachel, did you see the question that was in the chat? Basically, someone asked if you could put the link to the website. Yes. Thank you, Reagan.
Hi, I have a question.
Go for it.
So, is virtual shadowing only like limited to medicine, or is it like for other health professions such as like dentistry?
We are currently not doing dentistry or veterinary medicine. We are mainly for pre-medical, pre-PA, and pre-nursing at this time.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a question. So when you're applying to graduate schools with these virtual shadowing hours, do you know how many schools will take it, or is it still unsure because this is newer? I wish I could tell you that absolutely all schools will take it, but again, like you said, it is a new thing. COVID like impacted all these applications and process. So we're not 100% sure, but we have been talking to graduate programs, a couple of a couple of PA programs as well, and they have been very open to accepting these hours, and they know that this is a tough time for you guys to get shadowing because we're supposed to be social distancing, you know, not going around so much. So I think they're very open to having these hours. And I know from at least at the UT Southwestern kind of standpoint with Dr. Fowler and Dr. Marchetti, they're definitely fighting for these virtual hours to be accepted.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
Hey, no problem. Any other questions?
And also with the hours, if they're not able to be used as shadowing hours, there are other parts of your application that they can be put towards, such as extracurriculars or other healthcare experience. So even if you can't use these as legit shadowing hours, they can still be put to other uses.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, I think overall it would look great on applications that you are actively trying to still like be involved in medicine and learn about medicine during this time. Any other questions? All right, well, we do have another Q&A after if you ever have a question and you want to pop it in the chat. And also you can for sure contact us on Instagram or Gmail. All right, moving on. If my computer would go, oh, nope, okay. So Dr. Fowler and Dr. Marchetti wanted to be here today, but they are very busy. So we wanted to ask them a couple of questions to give you guys some advice and insight of, you know, who they are and what advice they can give, and kind of the people you'll be potentially talking to in our live sessions. So first, we asked Dr. Fowler about, you know, how do you balance work and life? And so let's see if you can hear this.
Can you turn it up a little bit, Rachel? It's kind of hard to hear.
Rachel, do you want to try like resharing, but whenever you press it, share computer sound? Maybe that would work.
Okay, yeah. I will try. Stop here and then.
It should be in the corner of when you press share screen.
Same as system. Select the microphone.
So when you click share, well, for me at least, when it says share screen on the very bottom left, it says share computer sound.
Okay.
Such balance really falls to the individual based upon, is the person in a relationship? What is one's job composed of? For example, my job as a division chief at a university is about 50% clinical time actually seeing patients and about 50% administrative time. So amongst any physician or physician assistant, there is the need to be able to try to set aside appropriate time for each activity. That's what I do. So one of the important things for me is that I will make my schedule, at least a month in advance, using the calendar program on my computer to lay out everything from appropriate rest periods, which are very important, to time that I know that I'm going to be spending down and just not doing work, to clinical time, to administrative activities as well.
All right, that was Dr. Fowler. Let's hear from Dr. Morchetti.
I think that it's important for us to try new things and take advantage of opportunities, but we also have to know our limits, especially if we're already strapped for time and struggling in certain areas. You have to set your priorities, and if your priorities are ever being overtaken by other things, then it may be time to learn to say no. And certainly harder when you have others that depend on you, like a significant other or children or something like that. So having people in your life who tell you when it's time to put your priorities back in order, I think is a big thing with work-life balance for me. So it's still a work in progress, shall we say.
Those were great words from Dr. Fowler and Dr. Morchetti. Again, keeping a schedule and having people to tell you, hey, you need to put your priorities in order. So another question that we asked our providers are, okay, what is a day in your life and how has COVID impacted your practice? Let's hear from Dr. Fowler first.
I work 7 clinical shifts a month, which is about a 50% clinical time. A typical day for me, if I'm working clinically, is that I'll try to rest part of the day, and then I will go into the hospital, typically early. I will go over the charts before I go in so that I'm aware of the patients, because the riskiest time for patients in the emergency department is what's called shift change time. I will then go in and take over the clinical pod and will manage the pod until quitting time. I typically work afternoon shifts and get off about midnight, and then I will have some downtime after my shift. On administrative days, I will typically have meetings scheduled. We're here at the university, and so we have a number of educational opportunities, such as our all Thursday morning conference. And so I will lay out these various activities, everything from new faculty interviews to administrative meetings to about running the emergency department to quality control meetings. I also have meetings scheduled with the EMS, the ambulance service agencies with whom I work as well. So I just try to schedule all this so I'll have a reasonable day. Those reasonable days commonly run to 12 or 13-hour days, however. The COVID epidemic has been very worrisome. I started practice of medicine back in the late 70s, and so I saw the HIV epidemic come back in the 1980s. And we did not know what it was early on, and to be true, we thought the epidemic was going to cover the world, which it did. Fortunately, there are now treatments. for HIV, such as the various antivirals and the protease inhibitors. We're not yet there with COVID. Somewhere between 25% and 50% of people who get COVID are asymptomatic. I caught COVID myself, and I was asymptomatic. I had no symptoms. The important thing is the fact that we must pull together as medical providers, as physicians, nurses, techs, and support each other so that we all know that we have a job to do. It's appropriate also and very necessary that we take the time that we have to get away from the clinical environment and to have our own lives as well, so that we can restore ourselves and regain the strength that we need. It is very important that appropriate rest be taken by the medical provider so that they can truly unwind and be able to get their strength back for when they return to the clinical environment. For those that exercise, that's very important. Avoiding using substances like a lot of alcohol and so forth is very important. Taking care of oneself is critical. So to summarize, the COVID experience is the worst epidemic we've seen on a scale that approaches the 1918 pandemic, where some 600,000 Americans died. We've now had 200,000 Americans die in this epidemic. And so we know we have our job to cut out for us, and we know it's very important we take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our patients.
Let's hear from Dr. Morchetti next about how COVID has impacted his practice.
So I think that you have to.
Sorry, play the wrong video. Okay.
Well, a typical day depends on which hat I'm wearing. So, for example, as an ER physician, I'll have most of my shifts are in the evening, so a lot of meetings in the morning, usually EMS related meetings, and then I'll go to my shift, and on my shift, the volume is back up. Around here in Dallas, the volumes were down because most people were avoiding coming to the ER, but the volumes are back up. It's still busy, and I am often balancing my responsibilities with EMS out in the field, taking online medical control calls from paramedics, taking care of patients out in the field, with my patients in the ER, teaching residents, teaching medical students. And a 9-hour shift can go by in the blink of an eye. I didn't go to the bathroom. I didn't eat. It's certainly very busy. For EMS position work, I think most of that is administrative stuff. Sometimes I go out into the field if I'm called out there, doing stuff on the SWAT team or with the fire department. Maybe a little bit more of a nice Monday through Friday schedule for that. And COVID doesn't really impact that. In fact, it may have actually made for more meetings because we're dealing with a bunch of administrative things, keeping our crews safe and healthy out there.
Perfect.
So that's from Dr. Morchetti. Dr. Morchetti actually was a non-traditional applicant into medical school, and he did physical therapy and then also EMS before doing medicine. So he definitely does wear a lot of hats in his practice. And if you want to hear more about COVID and like the receptors and how providers are actually like aiming to treat COVID, you can watch I think it's our 3rd session on our YouTube channel. I think it's called just COVID-19. And Dr. Fowler does a great explanation on the numbers that have been affecting Dallas. They both work in Parkland Hospital, which is in downtown Dallas, and how that has affected their practice and how they approach it. And if you want to hear more about Dr. Morchetti's, day in the life and his, tactical medicine / SWAT side, you can watch, I think, our 5th session. And he actually gave us a little tour on what he does, all the machinery and equipment. And he actually showed us a video about a drug bust. So that was really fun. So if you ever want to watch that, you absolutely can. Next, we asked both of our providers about burnout and how do you maintain a positive mentality, especially in this pandemic time.
Well, a friend of mine said that burnout is the response of a normal person to a toxic environment. I was watching on Facebook just the other day on the EM docs, emergency medicine docs, and it was very interesting to see these really younger physicians saying that they're already burned out. And I thought that was very interesting because I know that just a few years before, they were promising admissions committees that they were going to work to the betterment of the human condition through learning and applied science to be in a partnership for healthcare. Burnout is something that has to be identified. For example, fatigue and not wanting to go to work, excessive physical fatigue, loss of weight, putting on weight, the use of substances like alcohol, these sorts of things. It could be signs that mentally a medical provider, such as a physician, is not adapting well to an environment. There's a word called mitigate, which means to prevent something from happening. It's very important to having mitigation strategies so that one can prevent burnout in one's professional life. Such strategies include appropriate rest, eating appropriately. I mentioned the avoidance of substances, exercise, really watching oneself to see if one finds oneself excessively fatigued or not resting well. I think it's really important that one seek out one's fellow medical providers, other physicians, nurses, staff, and be able to talk things through. Other issues have to do with the clinical environment itself, the phone ringing a lot, the fax machine going off a lot, alarms going off a lot. If there's a way to prevent these things so that we don't develop excessive work fatigue in the working environment, so that would be very important. So in a word, watching oneself while mitigating burnout symptoms and having strategies to prevent burnout is very important.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Morchetti about burnout.
So I think that you have to, first of all, have a job that you find rewarding and satisfying and feel like you're giving back. That way, when you are working hard and it's long days and long nights, that you at least feel like you're doing something that's worthwhile. And that does help to not, bring you down or make you feel like, despair. Also, maybe not for everybody, but I think it is important to, believe in a higher power than ourselves. And that helps me to realize that I'm not really in control and, these things will happen and, it's my job to try to make the most of it. But, I definitely believe that things happen for a reason. So, this job as a physician, when you're at the stage where you guys are at, it seems kind of ideal and that everything's peachy and rosy, but it's definitely not always rainbows and unicorns. There's days where my patients are pissed off and yelling at me. My boss is not happy. The wife and kids are not happy. I've already been through a lawsuit in my young career. So there are days where I'm just like, why did I get into this job? But then I remember that the work that I do is important and that I'm helping people and giving back. And that's what kind of helps to keep me staying hopeful and keep going.
Gotcha.
All right. Next, we've asked them about imposter syndrome. And I don't know if y'all, felt that in your undergrad, like, oh, I'm not smart enough. I'm not, good enough. It still happens. You still can feel it in practice and going through medical school. So this is what Dr. Fowler and Dr. Morchetti had to say about imposter syndrome.
One of the things that happens with time is that as one gets older, the things that you want to do become more apparent. Part of that has to do with just simply living your life and getting life's experiences. When one is very young and one just simply hasn't had a lot of life's experiences, it's awfully normal to be on a track where you're trying to do something, but you don't really know if that's what you really want to do. My advice is very simple. Identify what you're good at, learn how to study, and pay attention to the things that seem to be apparent in your life that you enjoy doing. And understand that your life will change, and you will find things that perhaps you're doing now that you enjoy that later on you don't enjoy. And it is okay in your life to change. It's okay in your life to fail. The important thing is that we have to learn from these things. For example, all of us will have failures. I have certainly had my own. And let failures be lessons so that you can avoid things that cause the failure. For example, not resting well the night before an important exam. Or a failure might be the fact that you're directing yourself toward a target and you've had a failure, and that failure speaks to you. And it says to you, you know, maybe this is not the right track for me. So don't hesitate to try other directions in your life. That is perfectly okay. And just because your track changes does not in any way question you as a valid person who has a lot to offer the world.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Marchetti.
Imposter syndrome sucks. Every day, every single day. You can use it to your advantage. It can help to keep you humble. It can help to keep you motivated to want to work hard and keep learning and keep perfecting your craft. But it can also be debilitating if you let it. As you keep thinking, you know, I'm not good enough, I shouldn't be here, and you have an overwhelming fear of failure. I think it's important to learn the difference between humility and fear. So there's taking humility in your accomplishments, and then there's feeling overcome with fear because of them. So you know, learn how to feel worthy without feeling entitled. So for example, like I feel worthy of my job and my title and my position, but I'm certainly not entitled to it. At any point, there's people who are better than me at this, and they could be here too. But I'm proud to be here. So I think overall, probably the most important thing is just people have to learn to stop being perfectionists. It's counterproductive. Be realistic. So we're all going to screw up. We're all going to suck at some stuff. Most of us are going to take more than once to get something right. Everyone needs help. There's always someone who's going to be better at me than any given thing that I'm trying to do, and that's okay. My advice is just to relax, trust yourself, challenge yourself, and then watch you surprise yourself.
All right. Next, let's talk about gap years. Are you questioning about gap year? If so, do it. Reagan and I are actually both in our gap year, and honestly, gap years can be great, and they can only help. They're not looked down upon for admissions committees, and not everyone goes into medical school fresh from undergrad. You can use your gap year to relax. Like, I know that undergrad can be so overwhelming, you know, like Dr. Marchetti said, you don't need to be perfect, but there's like this expectation to be perfect, to get all those good grades, to get a perfect score on your MCAT, PCAT, GRE, or whatever you gotta take, to do all these activities and also somehow have a life. It can get overwhelming. So you can take a year or maybe more to relax, de-stress, make sure that, you know, medicine is right for you. Or if you're lacking in anything such as shadowing or volunteer experience, you can use your gap year to improve on that and really bulk up your application. And you can also use your gap year to make sure you're in the right mental space. medical school admissions or any graduate school admissions is really looking for if you're going to be a good fit. If they invest all this time in you, are you going to be able to take those lessons and really be a provider, or are you going to burn out really quickly because you're not in a good mental space? So to really ensure that you are in a good mental space, you can take a gap year, you can relax. Gap years aren't bad. Reagan, do you have anything to add on for taking a gap year?
I don't think I have much to add. I think you really summed it up really great. But like the slide says, the gap year can only help you. That's time for you to take time for you and to, prioritize some things that you need to work on to become a more well-rounded applicant. And of course, to take time for you to take a break. I know graduating from college, I was so ready to not have to study for a while. And so I can't imagine having to have gone to medical school right after. And so, it's time for you to take time for yourself and you to take time to kind of check over your application and make sure that you have everything you need covered.
Yeah. And you can even learn a language too, or learn something new. I'm learning Vietnamese. I think, Reagan, you're learning what, German and Spanish?
Spanish, yes.
So yeah, it's a time you can also use to learn new things that you didn't have a chance to in undergrad. So definitely take a gap year if you're thinking about it. And then lastly, we asked both of our providers to just give some advice to all of y'all. So let's hear from Dr. Fowler first.
My advice is to not worry too much about it. Do what you're good at doing. Learn how to study. The advice I was given about studying when I was a kid, and a kid would be 50 years ago when I entered the University of Georgia, was to go to every single class, sit in the front, write down everything the teacher says, go home that night and outline your notes, and at the exam time, study your outline. And if you do that, this is the anamnestic approach to memory. You hear it again, and you hear it again. And so this is how the mind is able to remember. Well, this is an era now of having all sorts of information strategies, podcasting, lectures. The medical students here at the UT Southwestern get most of their lectures at home, especially now in the COVID era. And so they study at home. But on the other hand, you have to stimulate your memory so that you can memorize and recall. It's always frustrating as a student. A friend of mine who was the former chairman of the admissions committee here called the phenomenon of gorging and purging. You stuff the information in your head, and then it's almost like it flows out of your ears after the exam is over. It is going to be very natural over time that you will learn information at the same time that you have experience. And the experience will mesh together with the information that you learn, which over time relatively permanently imprints the information in your mind. Relax, trust yourself, gain good study habits, and be patient with your destination in life, because it will come to you over time.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Marchetti.
I'd have to say it came from my dad. So my dad moved here from another country, college age, didn't know the language, didn't have hardly any money at all. And I remember growing up, he got married, had 3 kids, and we were pretty poor. I remember waking up every Saturday morning early. We'd go and we'd wash windows and clean carpets and mow lawns and rake leaves and touch up paint, $10 here, $20 there. And I watched him put himself through college with 3 kids, working like that. And then he dragged me and my brother along to do that work as well. And that was just what I had to do to contribute to the household. And I remember he told me that there's nothing in life that you can't have if you're willing to work hard enough to get it. So, I don't consider myself smart, certainly not book smart. I overcome my lack of intelligence with work ethic. And that was kind of what got me through, now 2 doctorate programs and a lot of years of education was just work ethic. And so I think med school or any health profession that someone goes into, it's probably a lot more about your work ethic than it is about your sheer book smarts.
All right. So that's all that we have for you. Does anyone have any questions from the chat? Sorry, I kind of went over. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to email us or DM us on Instagram.
Thank you, Rachel and Reagan, so much for telling us about these cool opportunities to shadow virtually, even in the midst of this pandemic. For everyone, please sign into the session so we know that you're here. I dropped the link in the chat too. And then we have 10 minutes, or we have 3:30 is when the next breakout session will happen. And thank you for everyone for coming.
Thanks y'all for coming and listening. I hope you guys join our program. We would love to see your faces in our live sessions. And I hope you guys get to virtually meet Dr. Fowler and Dr. Morchetti rather than a voice recording. Does anyone have any questions? Well, if no one has any other questions, and if you can always email us or DM us. Thank you so much for having us, and again, we hope to see you in the future. Thanks for having us. Bye.
Did everyone get the sign in? Okay, I'm going to end this.